Welcome to another episode of The Dissection. On Tuesday, Donald Trump surprised many people who've been following the story. He nominated Leo Brent Bozell III to be the next USA ambassador to South Africa. This came as a surprise because many people thought that the nomination would go to Joel Pollak, who's been having a lot of media events, a lot of press coverage, and was being described as the frontrunner for the job. He was the man who was even involved in the ejection of the South African ambassador Ibrahim Rasool from America after his appearance on a Zoom chat. But Trump went a different direction. On Tuesday, he nominated Leo Brent Bozell III, and on Thursday, he appointed him to the role. Donald Trump said the following on Truth Social, which is his social media platform, in respect to this particular announcement. He said, "I'm pleased to announce that Brent Bozell will be our next United States ambassador to South Africa. Brent brings fearless tenacity, extraordinary experience, and vast knowledge to a nation that desperately needs it." So he's saying he's coming to educate South Africa. Donald Trump will always have shade that he's going to throw your direction. He says Bozell is going to bring vast knowledge to a nation that desperately needs it. So South Africa is just a nation that desperately needs knowledge, like didn't do the first hand transfer and didn't do a lot of this stuff. They need Brent to come in and bring his vast knowledge. Anyway, who's this man? Who is Mr. Brent Bozell III? Mr. Bozell is a conservative media commentator, and he is most known as being the founder of the Media Research Center. He was originally a Donald Trump skeptic in the first Trump election, but has turned into one of his biggest and most loyal supporters in the conservative circles. So Bozell has played a significant role in shaping conservative activism through his organization's writings and media appearances. His work has been influential in promoting conservative viewpoints on mainstream media bias and cultural issues. Mr. Bozell actually was not supposed to go in this direction. He was not supposed to get this job because he had been previously nominated to lead the United States Global Media Agency. But that nomination was withdrawn on Monday, according to the U.S. congressional website. This is basically because the U.S. Global Media Agency is something that they're now shutting down. The U.S. Global Media Agency oversees a number of government outlets, including Voice of America. But as you know, they're shutting down Voice of America. They're going a different direction with how to use soft power, how to use media in the Trump administration on the global stage. So Voice of America, other programs are not in the Trump administration vision of soft power and influence around the world. So they couldn't send Bozell to this particular position because it was going to be basically an empty chair overseeing nothing. So then there was, I think, a decision that, okay, if we can't send him there, let's find something for him that is going to actually give him something to be passionate about, something that he can do in line with what he's interested in as well. So this is how I think he ends up in the role of ambassador as opposed to leading the U.S. Global Media Agency. The Global Media Agency position for somebody who was, campaigning against mainstream media, speaking up quite, aggressively against mainstream media is something that actually would have made sense if you think about his background and history. So more about this man. Leo Brent Bozell III was born on the 14th of July, 1955 in Washington, D.C. He's a 70-year-old American conservative writer, activist, media commentator, and here's what you need to know about his education and early life. He earned a Bachelor of Arts in History from the University of Dallas. He was named Alumnus of the Year in 1998, and he received an honorary PhD from the university in 2015. He comes from a notable political family in the right-wing circles. His father was a speechwriter for Senator Joseph McCarthy and a ghostwriter for Barry Goldwater's The Conscience of a Conservative book. His uncle was William F. Buckley Jr., who was a renowned conservative commentator. So he's somebody who has been in the Republican circles and would have a lot of gravitas in those circles, right? So his career highlights are the following. He founded this Media Research Center in 1987. So basically for 38 years, he has been on this particular mission. And it is now the largest media watchdog organization in the US. and it's focused on exposing left-wing bias in the media. So this is a guy who was watching the news one day and he was like, the media is biased against my party. I'm going to make an organization and I'm going to run it. And I'm going to keep reminding my party how this particular media is talking against us. And these are the type of things that Donald Trump himself has been saying for a long time. So the Media Research Center is a media watchdog group that targets network television hosts and mainstream media outlets with accusations of liberal bias. It operates platforms such as newsbusters.org, cnsnews.com, and several other initiatives. The site aims to expose and counteract liberal bias in the media through articles, opinion pieces, and reports. So Newsbusters, for instance, one of their key features are the following. They do media analysis. They do articles critiquing media narratives and trends. They do interactive content such as polls and discussions for user engagement. They have extensive archives. They have recordings of broadcast and cable news dating back to 1987. Thousands upon thousands of hours of media content. And they also provide resources for right-wing influencers to be able to participate in political discourse. They have conservative advocacy as one of their arms. He's also founded something which is known as the Parents Television Council in 1998 to promote decency in Hollywood, and he served as its first president till 2006. He founded an organization called For America in 2010, which is a social media-driven organization advocating for conservative principles. It has millions of followers on Facebook. Other roles that he served in, he served as the finance director and later president of the National Conservative Political Action Committee. And he founded the Conservative Victory Committee, PAC, in 1987. So you can see that this guy has been very involved in, one, conservative politics, two, the media side of conservative politics, three, an advocacy for conservative positions. So he's a hardcore conservative, and he's also somebody who is a MAGA. Mr. Bozell has actually participated in the media as a practitioner himself. He has had publications and media presence. He's a syndicated columnist whose work appears in outlets like the Wall Street Journal, the Washington Post, USA Today, National Review. He has authored several books, including Weapons of Mass Distortion and Whitewash. These are often co-written with Tim Graham. He has regularly featured on television programs such as Hannity, The O'Reilly Factor, and Good Morning America. So this means he would have been on Trump's radar in a very big way because Trump watches a lot of those shows. In his personal life, he's a Roman Catholic. He's married with 5 children and 17 grandchildren. You know, he would have a lot to talk about with Jacob Zuma, actually, if Jacob Zuma was still president of South Africa, right? Because they can talk about the 5 children, the 17 grandchildren, big families, all of that jazz, right? One of his children took part in the January 6th protest in 2020, sentenced for 4 years, got pardoned by Donald Trump. So he has actually, from a family perspective, lots of loyalty and support for the Trump administration. And now that Trump has pardoned his son, it shows you also that he may feel a sense of duty and loyalty to Donald Trump. And I'm giving this commentary just at a human level. As a human being, if somebody pardoned my son who went to prison in part for supporting him, I would actually feel obligated to support that individual myself. And I would do everything in my power to make sure that that individual's interests are protected, right? If you go to his Twitter profile, you will see that he has 2 flags on his profile. He has a United States of America flag and an Israel flag, right? He has been a vocal supporter of the Israeli government. After Hamas attacked Israel in October of 2023, he posted a fundraising appeal for Israel on his center's website, saying that he did not usually make appeals for outside causes, but was making an exception because this was an emergency and Israel is fighting for its very existence. So we can also extract from this that his known foreign policy position is one that supports Israel. So this makes him a hardcore conservative, a MAGA conservative, person who is pro-Israel, which may put him at odds with the ANC positions and also may make him very, very hostile to entities such as Iran and entities such as Hamas, right? This is what we can extract from his positionality. So Donald Trump has sent a hardcore MAGA man to protect his interests and, as he said, to, what did he say? To bring vast knowledge to a nation that desperately needs it. right? President Ramaphosa this week also made some comments about the USA and South Africa relationships and the appointment of the next South African ambassador to the USA. This is what he had to say.
Stoppage of funding. Well, we've had discussions about the stoppage of funding, and it is entirely within their own right. I mean, it is their money. And in many ways, it's a wake-up call on our part as South Africans that we've got to find ways of being self-reliant, of relying on our own resources. And that is what our people expect, even within our fiscal constraints and challenges. So this is a matter that we are discussing. And our sovereignty is important. And our sovereignty as a country should also mean that we must find ways all the time to look after the welfare of South Africans within or with our own resources. So this is a matter that we are going to be discussing. But what is prominent in our own minds is that the welfare and improving the lives of South Africans for us is prominent. And so therefore we must focus on that.
Mr. President, it's Natasha.
And within our fiscal...
Consulting your junior partners? Will you be consulting your junior partners on that replacement?
The president appoints ambassadors, and it is within his sole right to appoint ambassadors. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Mr. President.
I hope this doesn't break.
Our ambassador, with regards to the United States, our ambassador has come back home, and obviously it behoves on us as a government to mull over replacing our ambassador. The United States is the second largest trading partner to South Africa, so therefore we need to have top-class representation in the US, and that is something that we are still working on.
So as things stand, we can ascertain that the Trump administration strategy is to send a diehard MAGA man to occupy the role of US ambassador to South Africa. We can also see that the president has toned down his rhetoric to a degree, right? Initially, he was using language like South Africa will not be bullied. Now, having listened to him repeatedly, he has been pointing out that the USA is the second largest trading partner, is a historic partner, is an important partner. That's already a cooling down of the rhetoric. He's using more talking points around Ubuntu and human rights being central to South African foreign policy. He's not trying to instigate or to agitate the relationship between South Africa and the USA. Right? He's also acknowledging that, this is going to be a tricky terrain. And he's showing that by saying we're going to have to send, somebody who's a top ambassador. We have to send one of our best. All of that is an acknowledgement that it's a tricky situation and things will have to be addressed differently. Right? The other thing that shows the cooling off is that the ANC has also cooled off on naming Sandton Drive Leila Khalid Drive, because this is a lady who was a terrorist and she was part of a terror attack in Israel, I think in the 70s or something to that effect. So they were initially going to rename the drive after her, and after much consideration, I think now they're cooling off on that initiative because it would be the wrong gesture at this particular time to the Americans who are an ally of Israel. And what the Israelis have said is that this lady and the other people that took part in the terror activities actually did kill civilians. And that's the reason why they don't view her actions to be comparable to the actions of, somebody like Nelson Mandela. I don't know where you stand on that particular issue. I invite you to tell me your thoughts in the comments, but it does look as if the ANC has seen that it's a sensitive issue, and to make this particular decision at this particular time would actually exacerbate tensions as opposed to, cool down the fire and to actually ameliorate those particular tensions, which is what they would like to do at this particular point. So the choice of ambassador is going to be the next test in terms of from the South African side. It's going to be a measure of President Ramaphosa's approach to this issue and how much autonomy he will have and exercise in this. He was very clear. It's my role. I'm not going to be consulting with other people, but it's going to be a big decision. And he's obviously consulting with people that he trusts and trying to see how you can navigate this particular thing. The lack of envoys to America, I think, still remains an issue because he should have sent some people there to set the ground, to get the ground, to soften the ground, so to speak. Because the Cape Independence Party has also traveled to America, AfriForum, Solidarity, the Democratic Alliance. In fact, I've been intrigued to find out that the Democratic Alliance has spent about $90,000 on lobbying in the United States of America, which is not a lot of money. But the African National Congress has not spent any lobbying money in the United States of America. And this suggests to me that it may be very well one of the first things that has to happen is that he has to send these envoys to actually start the lobbying process, right? Get the ANC and some lobby groups that are affiliated to the ANC to start playing the game in the USA. Part of that is doing a vulamlomo. Vulamlomo in part of our African traditions, that's what you do when you want to start lobola negotiations. You go to the gate with your uncles, etc., etc. To get into the yard, you have to vulamlomo. You have to open the mouth. But you can't just open the mouth by saying, hi, how are you? We come in bearing good tidings of family building. You have to say all of those nice things, but you got to fucking maluzobon. And, you have to play the game. If the DA has done it, other people are doing it. It might very well be that this is the mistake that the ANC government is making, that they're not actually playing the lobbying game. You have to lobby in America. You have to support members of Congress and their causes financially to be able to get reception and, more importantly, support when your issue comes up. That's called realpolitik. The AGOA agreement is a critical agreement, right? South Africa is a large trading partner to the United States of America. From the South African perspective, US is number 2. And the value of exports in 2022 was $280 billion to the USA. So if you need to lobby to protect the $280 billion deals, why not do that? $90,000 is not a lot of money that the DA has spent. They've met people. Why don't you give about $10 million there in American circles? It's a lot of money, but get into the room and start speaking to Trump and them. If you put money down, did you see how Trump had Jeff Bezos, Mark Zuckerberg, Tim Cook? All of these guys had to contribute to Trump's inauguration to get front row tickets, to get their issues put onto the Trump agenda. Elon Musk had to contribute to the campaign. What I'm saying is that Trump is transactional. He's somebody who works with transactions. And if you put money into his causes, into his entities, into his party, and you lobby his guys with financial, real dollars, he's going to necessarily start viewing your issues differently. He could totally change tone, go a 360 and say, you know what? I don't think that I've been properly informed on America, on South Africa. And I think that, I've come to understand things more. Cyril Ramaphosa is a good guy, blah, blah, blah. That's the game. I think they have to play part of that game. DA cannot out-lobby the ANC in Washington. It can't be the case. I think it's a dereliction, in fact, if the ANC has not lobbied more aggressively. They need to put real money down in a place like America, especially if it's your second largest trading partner, right? The era of goodwill, relying on Nelson Mandela's brand, relying on the positive brand of South Africa, on stories like Invictus and et cetera, it's not necessarily going to work. And the Americans don't even like rugby, right? So they may not even know those stories in the same way. It's a time now where I think there needs to be a new approach. Donald Trump is going to be here till 2028. So the game has to be played in the terrain of Donald Trump. It's not going to be useful to assume this high ground of, no, we're not going to lobby, lobbying is shady, et cetera, et cetera. People lobby in South Africa in different ways anyway. We saw people contributing to political campaigns, et cetera. And some of them have relationships with government. Some of their companies have business with government, and some of them have big companies. We saw all of these CEOs donating to the president's project management office. So even if there's a moral argument to be made, how genuine would that moral argument be, considering that there are versions of this already happening in South Africa? It's time for realpolitik. Trump has made his move. He sent his man. Obviously, there's still some steps. The South African side still needs to accept the ambassador, etc., etc. He needs to present his credentials. We'll see how that plays out. That will be a big moment. But I don't think that President Ramaphosa is going to push back to Brent Bozell III. I think he's going to accept him, and then we're going to see what happens. So that's where things stand right now in terms of U.S. and South Africa relations. What do you think? Have you been following this story? What do you think? Do you think this can be solved by the ANC lobbying a little bit towards the Republican side in America? Let's have a conversation. Till the next one.